Buddhist sermon on Il Poya Day is delivered by Venerable Maharagama Ananda Thera, Sandavimala Sanasuna, Valigampitiya, Pokunuvita.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Itiko bhikkhave naidang brahmacharyang labha sakkara silokani sansang na sila sampadhani sansang na samadhi sampadhani sansang na jnana dassanani sansang yachako ayang bhikkhave akuppa cheto vimutti etadatta-midhang bhikkhave brahmacharyang etang sarang etang pariyosananti. Dear Dhamma friends, devotees, in this Il Full Moon Poya Day, you are going to listen to an important Dhamma preaching delivered by the Buddha. So I have quoted this sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya. The name of this sutta is Mahasaropama Sutta. Before we start the sutta description or discussing the contents of the sutta, let me tell you some important facts about the importance of this Il Full Moon Poya Day. As we know, the Il Full Moon Poya Day is important for us owing to several reasons. Among them, it was the day when the Buddha instructed his first group of disciples to wander all over the country preaching Dhamma. In other words, he instructed all the bhikkhus to propagate Dhamma, saying Charata Bhikkhave Charikang likewise. So this is one important fact. Apart from that, devotees, this day is very important for us because it is the day when the chief disciple of the Buddha, Venerable Sariputta Mahathera, passed away, and also on the same day, his mother, the Brahmin lady Rupasari, attained the stream entry. And apart from that, in this day, all the Katina ceremonies will be performed, will be make their ending on the Il Full Moon Poya Day. So without taking much time to discuss about the significance of the Poya Day, let us focus our attention to the sutta or the discourse that we are discussing today. Devotees, I quoted this sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya because it has some very important aspects of the monk's life, and also it can also be applied to your life, that means the lay life. Here the Buddha starts this sermon telling, so this holy life, monks, does not have gain, honor and renown for its benefit, or the attainment of virtue for its benefit, and also the attainment of concentration for its benefit, and also the knowledge and vision for its benefit. But it is the unshakable deliverance of mind that is goal, that is a goal of the holy life. In other words, its heartwood and its end. So this is the summary of this discourse, devotees, Dhamma friends. The most special thing of this discourse is the Buddha had compared the entire holy life to a tree. So in the due course, we'll discuss more about this, how this parable of tree is applicable for this discourse. So let us start with this sutta. Let us examine very briefly. Devotees, on one occasion, the Buddha addressed the bhikkhus just after the Devadatta had left. You know who is Devadatta, needless to tell. And especially the Buddha relates the Devadatta's life to this sutta, and he explains the vanity of leading such a life because he had so many opportunities, but he didn't make use of them. He didn't make use of them. So on one occasion, when the Buddha was dwelling in the Gijjakuta Pabbata, the mountain vulture peak, he addressed the monks and said, Bhikkhus, just imagine that there's a clansman, there's a man who goes forth out of faith from home to homelessness, thinking that I'm a victim of birth, I'm a victim of aging, I'm a victim of death, and I'm a victim of sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Therefore, he thinks surely there should be an ending of this whole mass of suffering which can be known from the human mind. Thinking that way, because, the Buddha says, he goes forth, he becomes a monk in the dispensation of Buddhism. And while leading a life of a monk, what does he do? He acquires gain, honor, and renown. We call in Pali Labha Sakkara Siloka. After gaining certain kind of gain, honor, and renown, he thinks like that. He thinks like this. I am the person who has all the honor and I am a renowned person. I have so many gains. But what about the other monks? They are not having such gains. Thinking that way, he lauds himself and disparages others. Thinking this way, he gets intoxicated. He falls into negligence with that thought. Then the Buddha says, Bhikkhus, I call such a monk. He is like a man who takes the twigs and leaves away, thinking they were heartwood. So what is this simile, devotees? Why did the Buddha say it is heartwood? I told you in the beginning that the Buddha had compared the holy life to the tree. You know what is the nature of the anatomy of a tree. In the outward appearance, we see twigs and leaves. And when we examine a cross-section of this trunk, a tree trunk, innermost part of the tree trunk is the heartwood. And covering the heartwood, there lies the sapwood. And covering the sapwood, there lies the outer bark. Covering the sapwood, there lies the inner bark. And covering the inner bark, there lies the outer bark. So likewise, there are 4 layers in the cross-section of a tree trunk. The Buddha says, this man who wants the heartwood, who needs the heartwood, who was in search for the heartwood, not knowing what is the nature of heartwood, what does he do? He takes the twigs and leaves away, thinking that they were heartwood. It is just like the Devadatta, who had the opportunity to associate the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, but he didn't make use of it, and he didn't get the desired fruit. Likewise, the Buddha continues the discussion again. Bhikkhus think that there is another man. Unlike the previous man, unlike the previous monk, he does not acquire, although he acquires gain, honor and renown, he doesn't laud himself and disparage others. Instead, what does he do? He achieves the attainment of virtue, Sila Sampadaha in Pali. While developing certain kind of virtue in him, he lauds himself and disparages others, thinking that I am the virtuous person. See, other monks are not virtuous. I am the morally high developed person, but other monks are immoral. And thinking that way, he gets intoxicated in that thought. He falls into negligence. And Buddha compares such a monk just like a man who takes the outer bark of a tree, thinking that it was heartwood, just like the Devadatta did. And again, devotees, there's a third man. Unlike the previous 2, the Buddha says, although he acquires the labha sakkara siloka, or the gain, honor and renown, although he has achieved the attainment of virtue, he doesn't get himself intoxicated in that feeling. But instead, what does he do? He gains concentration. We call them in Pali Samadhi Sampadaha. He develops his concentration. And while developing the concentration, having developed the concentration, he lauds himself and disparages others, thinking that my mother, mind is the only concentrated mind, but others' concentration is not that high. They are poor. My mind is unified, but others are not. Thinking that way, having a conceit developed within, what does he do? He gets intoxicated in that feeling and falls into negligence. The Buddha compares such a monk to just like a man who takes the inner bark away, thinking it was hardwood, just like the Devadatta did. Devotees, the Buddha gives another example. He compares another man, the fourth man, unlike the previous three. What is the nature of this monk? He, unlike the other previous three monks, he doesn't laud himself and disparage others, although he had acquired the gain, honor and renown, although he had achieved the attainment of virtue, although he has gained the concentration. But what does he do? Having all these three with him, without getting intoxicated in them, he gains knowledge and vision. We call them in Pali Jnana Dassana. Having developed the Jnana Dassana, he thinks like this: I am the only one who is knowing and seeing. But all the other monks, they don't have this Jnana Dassana, the knowledge and vision. And thinking that way, he lauds himself and he disparages others. And continuing that thought, developing that thought, he gets intoxicated in that way. He falls into negligence. The Buddha compares such a man. He is just like a man. He takes the sapwood away, thinking that it was hardwood. Okay, to this point, Dhamma friends, now we can understand all the four people who wanted to get the hardwood, but they didn't get the hardwood because they didn't have the understanding. They couldn't distinguish what is hardwood and what is sapwood and what is the inner bark and what is the outer bark and what are the twigs and leaves of a tree. Just like Devadatta, he wanted to attain Nibbana, but he was ignorant. He didn't know what is the value of the Dhamma. Although he wanted Nibbana, he didn't know the value of Dhamma. So he, just like the man who, although he wanted the hardwood, he didn't know what is hardwood. Therefore, thinking that it was hardwood, they took away the twigs and leaves of this life, and the outer bark of this holy life, the inner bark of this holy life, and the sapwood of this holy life. But there comes a fifth man at the end, the Buddha compares. What is the nature of this man, this monk? The Buddha says there's a fifth man, there's a fifth monk who is being diligent. He attains the perpetual liberation. Remember the word perpetual liberation. We call them in Pali Akuppa Cheto Vimutti. And the Buddha continues, being diligent, he attains the perpetual liberation, and it is impossible for that monk to fall away from that perpetual deliverance. Unlike the previous four cases, the Buddha says, when he attains the perpetual liberation, there is no way that he will fall away from the perpetual deliverance. It is just like the man needing in search, who needing the hardwood and seeking the hardwood, and who was wandering in search of the hardwood, having come to a tree, a great tree with hardwood. What does he do? He cuts off only its hardwood, the desired hardwood, and he would take it away knowing it was hardwood. I think you can understand, out of these 5 people, only the fifth one is the most successful one. All the other four instances, Dhamma friends, just think, we know that Sila Sampada is a good thing, and we know that Samadhi Sampada is a good thing, and we know Jnana Dassana, or the knowledge and vision, the concentration, the virtue, are all three are good things. But what does this Buddha say, Dhamma friends? He says that although while you are developing these things, if you get that thought, if you get intoxicated in the thought that I am the highest person, all the other monks are very low, they are not up to the standard, through that conceit, you develop some negative feelings. Therefore, through that way, you can't reach the Nibbana. But without getting intoxicated in these Labha Sakkara Siloka, or the gain, honor and renown, or the Sila Sampada, or virtue, or Samadhi Sampada, or concentration, or Jnana Dassana, or knowledge and vision, he should continue until he meets the perpetual liberation, Akuppa Cheto Vimukti, the perpetual deliverance, the same Akuppa Cheto Vimukti. So in that way, the Buddha says, the monk who is called, the particular previous four monks, they are the monks who were called those who has taken the twigs and leaves, the outer bark, the inner bark, or the sapwood of the holy life, and stopped short with that, without attaining the Nibbana. So from this sutta we learn, Dhamma friends, that Devadatta was so fortunate, but he didn't get the desired fruit from this dispensation of Dhamma. But in this lay life, look at this community, Dhamma friends. We are so fortunate to be born as Buddhists and to be born in Sri Lanka, to have the opportunity to listen to the Dhamma. But did you ever think that do we take the maximum benefit of this Dhamma? Do we become the owners of the Dhamma? Do we practice this Dhamma? So although if you are a born Buddhist, although if you have listened to a lot of Dhamma, although if you have read a lot of Dhamma books, Dhamma friends, if you are not practicing at least to a certain extent of this Dhamma, the Buddha says, you all are the people like who seeking the heartwood, who are needing the heartwood, who are in need the heartwood, and who are wandering in search of heartwood, but still take something else, thinking that they were heartwood. Therefore, Dhamma friends, remember, the heartwood of Buddhism is Nibbana. Okay, if somebody asks you very simply, what is Buddhism? The only best possible answer, Dhamma friends, to be given is this. If anybody asks from you, what is Buddhism? You can tell them, Buddhism is Nibbana. If somebody again asks from you, what is Nibbana? Then you can tell them, Nibbana is Buddhism. The Buddhism is Nibbana and Nibbana is Buddhism. There's no difference. So this is very clear when you go through the discourses of the Buddha. Dhamma friends, in this Mahasaropama Sutta, the Mahasara, the greatest benefit or greatest treasure of this holy life is Nibbana. But you should not mix up the monk's life and the lay life, because there are certain things a monk should perform in a monk's life, and there are certain things a layman or laywoman should perform in their lay life. But if we were to mix up these two, I think it is not the proper way of leading the life. The Buddha did not want a monk to behave like a layman. And in the same way, the Buddha did not want a layman to behave like a monk. These two are two different paths, Dhamma friends. If you mix up these things, you will lose the balance of your life. I think we have seen in this community of people, there are people who go to the extremes. They go to the extreme of the monk's life, and they also go to the extreme of the lay life. Going to the extremes is not advised. It was not advisable according to the Buddha. Therefore, Dhamma friends, the only message that the Buddha gave through this sutta to the monks, the community of monks, and also to the lay life, the lay people, is that even if you are on the path to liberation, you should not be clinging to any of these things. For instance, the Labha Sakkara Siloka, or the Sila Sampada, or the Samadhi Sampada, or the Jnana Dassana. They are good things, but you should not cling to them on your way to Nibbana. The Buddha says you have to make use of them, but without any attachment to them. Don't keep any attachments to them. So, likewise, if you want to reach the Cheto Vimukti, or the liberation, the final emancipation, if you cling to that, so that means you are clinging to nothing. Because in Buddhism, the Nibbana has been defined as unconditionality. It is not conditioned by anything. Therefore, if you cling to it, you are cling to nothing. You cling to nothing. Therefore, the Buddha says the Nibbana is the greatest thing that you can achieve in this life. And once you have achieved, there's nothing you have to suffer in it. So, if you can remember, this clansman came to this monk's life thinking that I am a victim of birth, and I am a victim of aging, and I am a victim of death and sorrow, and I am a victim of lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. There's suffering all over, Dhamma friends. That is why we need this dispensation of Buddhism. That is why we need this Nibbana. If there's no pain, if there's no aging, death, and sorrow, nobody would need the Nibbana. Therefore, remember, you are blessed with this beautiful teaching of the Buddha, this valuable teaching of the Buddha. But there are so many people in the universe, in the world, who don't have that opportunity. Therefore, Dhamma friends, make a determination from today onwards. If you are a Buddhist, first of all, you have to start with the virtue, the Sila. Then you have to go to the concentration, practicing certain kind of meditation. That is the concentration, Samadhi, Sila and Samadhi. And the Sila and Samadhi pave the way to the Panya, the wisdom, the development of wisdom. Dhamma friends, if you are protecting the 5 precepts, if you are virtuous, then that is the basis for the Samadhi, and that is the basis for the concentration. And then you can develop your concentration through Samadhi Bhavana, Anapanasati Bhavana, or any other meditation method. You have to practice them at least 15 to 30 minutes in a day. And after doing that, then you reach the wisdom at the ultimate result of that. Then having this message in your mind, Dhamma friends, in this ill full moon Poi day, I have told the significance of this Poi day to you. Okay, remember, recall this significance, and recall the things that I have taught you in this Dhamma sermon. Therefore, without taking much time, I'm here now to wind up this Dhamma sermon. Therefore, think this way, Dhamma friends. All the merits that we have acquired by listening to this Dhamma and myself preaching this Dhamma, may all these merits let us transfer to all the deities, all the celestial beings, all the divinity who protect this world, the dispensation of Buddhism, and all the people in this country and all the people in this world. And may them rejoice in this merit, and may them attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. And again, let us transfer all this merit to all the departed relatives to us, all the departed friends to us, and especially to all the soldiers who have sacrificed their life for their life, limb, and liberty to the territorial integrity of this country. And lastly, let us transfer all these merits. Let us rejoice in all these merits by ourselves, and let us make a strong determination, and let us make this determination until we reach the supreme bliss of Nibbana. May the noble triple gem bless you. ආකාසට්ඨා ච භුම්මට්ඨා දේවා නාග මහිද්దికා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත්වා චිරං රක්ඛන්තු ශාසනං. ආකාසට්ඨා ච භුම්මට්ඨා දේවා නාග මහිද්దికා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත්වා චිරං රක්ඛන්තු දේශනං. ආකාසට්ඨා ච භුම්මට්ඨා දේවා නාග මහිද්దికා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත්වා චිරං රක්ඛන්තු ත්වං සදා.
Buddhist sermon on Il Poya Day was delivered by Venerable Maharagama Ananda Thera, Sandavimala Sanasuna, Valigampitiya, Pokunu Vita.